At the beginning of this story, the pink-haired girl asks if she really has to put on these stockings. While trying them on, she comments that although her mobility is better, she finds it quite embarrassing to wear them. Right then, our protagonist, Ye Xian, tells her not to worry, and changing the subject asks if she has already packed everything necessary since they will be leaving this very night. The young girl, checking through her things, says she has several snacks with her, to which our prota reminds her that they are actually escaping to save their lives and are not just going on a picnic. At that moment, the girl, happily enough, mentions that she is also carrying her most important treasure. That's when we see a pair of dolls which were actually a gift from our prota. Ye Xian, blushing a bit, asks if she seriously spent that much time looking for them. Thus, they leave the cabin, and as they walk away, the woman asks if they will ever return, but our protagonist answers that as long as they are alive, any place will be safer than this home. He then tells us that he is an external disciple of the He-Wan sect, and that he is also a transmigrated person who has his own system. However, he cannot activate it no matter what he does. He tells us that having no talent for cultivation, he was rejected by various sects which valued talent as well as physical constitution. Around that time, our protagonist wondered about the meaning of his transmigration to this world. But just then, a young girl noticed him, and seeing that he was handsome, invited him to join the He-Wan sect. Having no other choice since nobody else would accept him, he decided to join. However, after entering the sect, he discovered the real reason why they didn't care about the disciples' constitution. It turns out they practiced dual cultivation, which is why he had a brief moment of happiness since he could finally cultivate. Nevertheless, this all fell apart when they got into conflicts with the righteous sects. He mentions that as an external disciple, he was sent straight to the front lines, where just a few months ago he was severely wounded and rescued by this beautiful girl named Xiao Tao. Staying at her house after that, and while recovering, he decided not to return to the sect. However, these peaceful days lasted quite short, as the war between both sides reached the area. For this reason, he decided to escape with the girl, which brings us back to the present day, where, deep in thought, he comments that he is no longer interested in cultivation and the only thing he wants is to live a happy life. Suddenly, they are stopped by a group, and the leader turns out to be the master of the Jade Maiden sect, Bai Ningbing. The disciple quickly recognizes that he belongs to an enemy sect, so she asks if she should just kill him. The master stops her, and from one moment to the next ends up completely subduing our protagonist, pinning him under her feet. Bai Ningbing asks about his sect's plans, but our prota replies that with his low cultivation level, he knows absolutely nothing about the sect's plans. Understanding this, the master gets quite annoyed. Right then, the subordinate asks for permission to finish off his companion, but the girlfriend Xiao begs them not to hurt her brother, telling them that he is a good person. Upon hearing this, the other woman gets angry and quickly ends up piercing right through her. Our protagonist watches this and sees how his beloved ends up falling down. While crawling forward, he asks why they attacked her since he no longer has anything to do with this war, finally reaching his beloved. At that, the other woman talks about our prota's sect and indicates that anyone who gets involved deserves to die. Our prota, furious, ends up spitting at her face. Enraged, he calls her stupid and states that even if he knew something, he would never tell them. Right at that instant, they pierce his eyes and end up gouging out his eyeballs. After letting out a loud scream, our prota starts insulting them fiercely. At that moment, Master Bai indicates that to eliminate evil, sometimes you must use whatever means necessary. The disciple understands this, and so they begin to dismember our protagonist. Still furious, he screams their names and states that even if there is another life, he will not let them escape. In that instant, the system's voice informs him that it detected a powerful obsession and also detects that he is on the verge of death, which is why it activates the repair system. Thus, the day passes and we find ourselves at a base of the He-Wan sect, inside a hut where our protagonist finally opens his eyes. Confused, he wonders if he wasn't dead after all. Right then, a woman's voice comments that he has finally woken up, and she excitedly mentions that he woke up just in time since now they can cultivate the sect's technique. While undressing, she mentions that she found him lying around, looking completely dead, and didn't expect him to recover so quickly. While she speaks, our protagonist remembers that this woman is named Feng Qin Jin, a fellow disciple who is well known for being ruthless. He realizes that if he cultivates with her, he will definitely die. So he tries to calm her down and asks about the status of the war, and the other woman, excited, replies that they achieved a great victory. She tells him that the master defeated Master Bai after a surprise attack. She adds that right after that, they wiped out the entire Jade Maiden sect, and after obtaining many treasures, managed to corner that stupid master. Our protagonist is shocked to hear this, and still confused wonders why he is still alive since with his injuries he should be dead. Remembering that wretched woman, he quickly goes out, stating that he himself will take care of sending her to hell. However, at that very moment, they end up stopping him. The sect sister asks if he is trying to escape, telling him that they haven't even started with the dual cultivation yet, and while rubbing against his body, comments that he won't feel any pain and that she will make sure he has a happy death. Yi Xian, thinking to himself, realizes that with his current level, he won't be able to face her. Just then, the system informs him that it completed his recovery and congratulates him for having awakened the personality correction system. Aprota doesn't understand any of this, and the system explains that he will be able to subdue any person who holds 100% malice toward the host, and that after doing so, he will obtain rewards. At that point, the sect sister knocks him down and asks if he'll stop resisting. In the next instant, Aprota looks at her information, and after seeing all of this, our protagonist asks why, furiously asking why it decided to appear only now. He then orders it to absorb her, and immediately, chains appear, trapping the sect sister. As she disappears, she asks what kind of technique this is, finally begging him to stop. Once she vanishes, Aprota, annoyed, comments that if it had appeared earlier, he wouldn't have lost his beloved. So he grits his teeth and enters his inner space. Inside, he observes many cells which seem to be completely sealed, wondering if he must meet some condition to be able to use them. At the very back, he spots his sect sister, who asks what he did to lock her up. Aprota, paying no attention to her, asks how he can get the rewards. The system informs him that the first option is to use any means to reform the personality of his target, and that the greater the reform, the greater the reward he will get. The second option is to eliminate her physically, and after refining her, obtain a lesser reward. Meanwhile, as the woman asks what he will do to her, the system requests him to choose one of the options. Our protagonist thinks it over and asks what reward he will get if he decides to refine her directly, to which the system answers that he will rise to body refinement level 6 along with the Phoenix Union manual. At that, the woman begs him not to ignore her, while the system continues to indicate that if he forces the reform, he will be able to enslave the target, and that besides that, he will obtain the Dragon's Dance technique. Our protagonist thinks about this, and before making his choice, he comments that he doesn't have time to go around educating her, so he decides to choose the direct refinement and jump straight to level 6. Thus, while this is taking place, the sect sister begs him not to do it, beginning to plead with him and indicating that she will accept being his slave or servant. Right at the very last moment, a strange voice asks who is inside. While they demand for them to come out, the system warns of the presence of cultivators near the host, forcing him to exit, and, quite annoyed, he asks who is interrupting him. At the same time, inside the space, the relieved sect sister comments that at least she is still alive, and with that, we see that her reform reached 50%. On the outside, the other party forces the door open and angrily asks what they are doing, since they must go to the battlefront, and once inside asks for the sect sister. Our protagonist looks at him and, making up a story, tells him that he went out to cultivate in seclusion. The other one doesn't pay much attention to him and decides to take him along, since they need a lot of people, and as they move forward, our protagonist observes several cultivators, so he asks where exactly they are going. The other one, without hiding anything, replies that they are going to capture the master of the Jade Maiden sect, Bai Ningbing, and so he tells him that during the night they eliminated a large number of her disciples, which is why she was forced to hide in a cave that has already been surrounded by the master. Our protagonist gets upset upon hearing her name and cannot believe that his opportunity for revenge has arrived so quickly, and thus they reach a cliff. One of the masters orders them to group up, and while they get organized, several comment that it seems they captured Master Bai. They also indicate that if they manage to catch her, it seems they will be able to do whatever they want with her. While they talk about such stupidities, our protagonist wonders if they are idiots since they are clearly trying to use them. Right then, the system reports the reform of Feng Qinjin, who reached 50%, raising him to body refinement level 5. While he goes up in level, a companion is shocked to see that he surpassed his level right before the battle. So our protagonist makes an excuse and, thinking to himself, wonders why that woman started reforming if he didn't even do anything to her. Just then, the masters arrive, and one of them calls for silence since they will now welcome the sect master. Thus, we see the said master, who is at the golden core stage, and while everyone greets him, our protagonist comments that it's the first time he sees him, followed by the sect master ordering everyone to rise. He then gives a few instructions. Immediately, the other masters begin to hand out medicines to improve their strength. Our protagonist receives the said medicine, and in the next instant, the master orders them to take it. Our protagonist, thinking to himself, comments that this sect would never give them pills without a reason. However, looking at the sect master, he notices that he won't be able to avoid taking it. So without any other choice, he pretends to take the pill. After this, the sect master tells them that Master Bai is seriously wounded inside the cave. He tells them that if they attack her all at once, they can defeat her. Without wasting any time, the disciples, as if losing control, throw themselves into the attack, frantically rushing into the cave. And while they say nonsensical things, our protagonist wonders if this is the work of the pill. Moments later, they manage to find Master Bai Ningbing, who looks on badly wounded, and as our protagonist approaches, thinking to himself, he comments that he will teach her a lesson and reform her completely. Right then, the master raises her hand, asking how they dare. She then uses her sword, and while moving her fingers, begins to slash through her enemies. Not too far away, our protagonist watches this, and aware of his level, comments that if he gets close, it will only be suicide. However, at that very instant, the corpses begin to bloat. The master senses the danger, and in the next instant, suffers great damage due to the explosion, thus ending up seriously injured, and she cannot believe that these corpses actually exploded. However, at that moment, she notices a strange mist. At the same time, on the outside, the masters hear the explosion and one of them asks if they should go in, but the sect master stops him, indicating that besides the explosion, there is also the blood mist. He thus reveals that this is an aphrodisiac poison, and returning to the inside, we see that the master begins to suffer the effects, quickly wondering why her body feels so hot. Seeing this, our protagonist spits out the pill, understanding that besides exploding the body, it also releases an aphrodisiac poison. Right then, Master Bai notices his presence and asks who is there, quickly drawing him near. And once she has him in her hands, she remembers that he is the ant from the day before, asking in confusion why he isn't dead. While she insults him, our protagonist asks the system if he can't absorb her into his space. But the system informs him that the malice toward the host is only at 50%, and that to absorb her, it must reach 100%. Thus, to provoke her, our protagonist talks about the disaster of her sect and that now she can only take it out on a nobody like him. He continues to indicate that he brought all the elites of his sect, and in the end, they were annihilated by his sovereign, also calling her a coward, indicating that in the end, she will finish as a cultivation cauldron used by his sect. Upon hearing this, the master gets angry, furiously mentioning that this wouldn't have happened if she hadn't been betrayed by that wretch, and as she approaches, she swears to torture him and kill him with her own hands. Thus, as she gets closer, our protagonist asks what level her malice is at. The system informs him that it is at 90%, and Yixian is surprised to hear this, desperately dodging the attacks. In the end, the master launches her final attack, and our protagonist feels that this is the end. However, to his surprise, the sword ends up falling down. Right then, he observes the master, who wonders why her body no longer has any strength, thus beginning to succumb to the pleasure, mentioning that she can no longer bear it. At the same time, outside the cave, one of the masters asks if she won't be able to solve the problem, and the sect master answers that she won't do it, since that poison is something difficult to treat. He thus suggests waiting a bit longer and entering once the effects reach their peak. A moment passes, and inside the cave, we see the unconscious master. Next to her, we see our protagonist, who was forced to perform the dual cultivation. Getting dressed, he didn't expect that in this short time he would rise to the 9th level of body refinement. Looking at his enemy, he comments that her sacred body truly has infinite applications. Thus, they stare at each other for a moment. The master quickly accuses him of having forced her, but our protagonist scoffs, indicating that with his level, he wouldn't be capable of forcing her. He then recalls what happened, and the master refuses to believe it. If not, she takes her sword and angrily asks if he really thinks she will spare his life for having slept with her. Having said this, she throws herself into the attack again. But right then, the system informs him that her malice toward the host rose to 100%. With this, our protagonist looks at her information. However, when he wants to absorb her, the system reports that he cannot since the cells are full. Left with no choice, our protagonist decides to release Feng Qinjin. Thus, he takes out the sect sister, and in the end ends up trapping Master Bai. After this, he begins to absorb her, and finally, the master ends up entering our protagonist's inner space. And with this done, Ye Xian shows a smile. Inside the space, the master wonders where she is and why she cannot use her cultivation. But our protagonist asks her to stop fighting, indicating that in this place, everything is under his control. Seeing this, the master asks who exactly he is, and to her surprise, our protagonist hits her and asks if she still doesn't understand her situation. After this, he asks the system what he will get if he manages to reform her. The system replies that if he does, he will be able to enslave her directly, and that besides that, he will advance to the Foundation Establishment realm and awaken the sacred body of the flame. Upon reading this, our protagonist didn't expect that this sovereign would be so generous, so he takes out a whip and indicates that it seems he will have to try very hard to train her. While he gets ready, the master begs him to stop. Unfortunately, the system warns that targets were detected close to the host. Shortly before, we see that the sect master unlocks the entrance and prepares to go inside the cave, and with a sinister smile, mentions Sovereign Bai, indicating that he made her wait. Thus we see our protagonist, who returning to reality, comments that he is finished. As they enter, Yesen mentions that this cave has only one single entrance, so he decides to take a chance anyway, and while intentionally injuring himself, he remarks that it seems he actually used way too much force. Right after this, the sect master orders everyone to scatter, so they begin searching all around the surrounding area. Moments later, one of them comes back to report that they found a man and a woman. Upon hearing this, the sect master is genuinely surprised, since he didn't expect any of his disciples to survive at all. He also asks if the woman happens to be Bai Ningbing, and then we see the female survivor who is wondering where on earth she is. The very next instant, the sect master suddenly grabs her. Right after that, he drops her right at his feet and, with a truly terrifying aura, demands to know where Bai Ningbing is. The other woman recognizes that he is the sovereign and answers that she knows absolutely nothing. At the exact same time, the other masters try their best to calm him down. They wonder if perhaps the sovereign has gone completely mad from pure rage. The female companion remarks that, after all, he planned this entire thing just to capture the #1 beauty of the Orthodox sect. So the sect master flies into a rage and, grabbing the woman, asks exactly how long she plans to keep pretending. He thus reveals that she is surely hiding her cultivation level and changed her appearance just to deceive him. Upon hearing this, one of the masters asks what he is talking about. With that, the sovereign master points out that this woman is actually Bai Ningbing in disguise. Hearing this, Feng Qinjin explains that she is merely a disciple from her own sect. At the same time, our protagonist, thinking to himself, mocks the situation since he was wondering how to explain everything and didn't expect them to hand him an idea. Just then, the sect master notices her seductive aura and points out that it is surely due to the intense side effects of the aphrodisiac. The disciple quickly corrects him, pointing out that this seductive aura is part of her cultivation learned within the sect. Hearing this, the master remarks that it doesn't matter if she won't admit it, since there is an eyewitness. Seeing him, Feng Qingjin flies into a rage and quickly launches an attack, shouting that all of this is entirely his fault. However, she is quickly subdued, and after running her through, the sect master demands that they wake the boy up. So they give him some medicine, and once he wakes up, our protagonist thanks them for saving his life. Just then, the Sovereign Master asks about what happened inside the cave. After this, our prota tells a story that once his brothers entered the cave, they ended up dying due to a sudden self-detonation. He tells that after that, the Sovereign Bai was left severely wounded, and that following this, she changed her appearance and took the form of that woman. The Sovereign laughs out loud upon hearing this, so he orders them to take her away, since once the war is over, he plans to use her as his own cultivation cauldron. In the end, Feng Qingjin, completely unable to speak, can only curse our protagonist in her mind. After all this, the Sovereign turns around, indicating that now the Jade Maiden sect will no longer be a threat. However, he remembers that all the disciples who took the pill ended up exploding. That said, he asks why he survived. Our prota already expected this outcome, so he tells that after taking the pill, he felt a sharp, stabbing pain in his stomach, and that right after that, the Sovereign Bai sent him flying, and he knocked out unconscious from the impact. Hearing this story, one of the masters mentions that this boy was only at the 3rd level, and now he is at the 9th level. He deduces that he surely has a special body to resist poisons. Hearing this, both masters smile since they precisely needed a test subject to try out the new medicines. Immediately, the master takes our prota and places him under his tutelage. Hearing this, our prota expresses his gratitude and swears to give his life for the sect. After saying this, our prota, thinking to himself, wonders what they are plotting. However, he must go along with them for now to save his life. A few moments later, they arrive at one of the bases. Once they descend, the master indicates that he is now his disciple, so he will give him his very first task. Our prota gladly listens to this, but thinking to himself, he mentions that at the first opportunity he will run away. Just then, the master searches through his things and quickly demands that he swallow the pills. After this, our protagonist remarks that his cultivation is still far too shallow and he would only be wasting such treasures. The master calms him down and indicates that he shouldn't be afraid since he has a physical body that is highly resistant to drugs. Our prota finally understands why he accepted him, realizing that he wants to use him as a test cauldron for his medicines, so he looks for a way to reject it. Just then, the master asks if he happens to know the consequences of tricking him. Having no other choice, our prota takes one of the pills and decides to play along with him. Hearing this, the master pulls out a sheet of paper and demands that after taking it, he record every single reaction he feels, so he begins to write it down. However, at that very moment, he feels a tremor and asks what is going on. Just then, a subordinate reports that the Orthodox sect is attacking them. Hearing this, our prota asks his master to go ahead, indicating that he will take care of writing down all the changes. So the master agrees and orders them to bring all the disciples to face the enemy. Once he leaves, our protagonist breathes a sigh of relief and remarks that he will take the opportunity to escape. Just then, he notices the shelf and remarks that he could also take a great treasure booty. Without wasting any time, he asks the system to release the Sovereign Bai. The very next instant, she ends up coming out. Happy, she remarks that she finally managed to get out of that wretched place. However, at that exact moment, our protagonist holds her back, indicating that she will never be able to escape his hands. The Sovereign, annoyed, asks what he intends to do, to which our prota asks her to select the most useful pills. The woman replies that she knows nothing about alchemy since usually her disciples took care of that. Our prota replies that it doesn't matter since at least she should recognize the most valuable ones. Just then, the Sovereign, thinking to herself, wonders if she is seriously under the control of this petty cultivator. Right then, she notices something and wonders why he is holding that pill, so she deduces that it could surely help her recover her cultivation. With this in mind, she begins to point out the most valuable treasures. The next instant, she takes advantage of our prota's distraction and ends up stealing the pill from him. Without wasting any time, She finishes swallowing it. While a great power breaks loose, our protagonist asks if she seriously took the pill. The sovereign, on the other hand, with a smile, remarks that it seems she wasn't mistaken, so she tells that she feels a massive power. However, the very next instant, she notices something strange. Her body quickly begins to demand something from her. Feeling this intense pleasure, the sovereign wonders why this situation feels so familiar to her. At the same time, our protagonist realizes that his master wanted to give her a high-intensity pill. Just then, the sovereign takes him by the hand and, completely lost under the effects of the pill, begs him to give it to her right away. Yesen smiles upon hearing this and asks if she seriously has the nerve to beg him. The other, with no other choice, replies that she was wrong. Our prota, pulling on the chain, demands that she show him her attitude. Having no other choice, the sovereign clenches her teeth and, crawling on the floor, begs him to punish her. Just then, the system reports that he managed to reform her to 15%. Right after that, she immediately enters the first level of the key refinement realm because of this. Upon seeing this, our main protagonist simply smiles, and after throwing a quick insult her way, he completely subdues her. He tells her that he will give her one last chance, so she better not disappoint him, and right then, he gives it to her like a drawer that just won't close. A few moments later, our protagonist stretches out, indicating that the poison from that pill was actually quite difficult to neutralize. At the exact same time, the sect leader just cannot believe that she has been deeply humiliated once again. Right then, the system officially informs him that after carrying out the very first act of reformation, he has successfully unlocked the second room. Our protagonist is genuinely surprised, since he definitely did not expect to get this kind of reward. Right at that moment, he notices the sudden presence of new cultivators. Yesen gets deeply annoyed because they always seem to interrupt him right at the most interesting part. Thus, he returns to reality and points out that he might as well take advantage of the chaos to escape. He immediately wakes up the sect leader. However, at that precise instant, the floor completely shatters, and they end up falling down into a hidden secret chamber. Fortunately, our protagonist has exactly what it takes to cushion the impact of the fall. Once he gets back up, he wonders what kind of place this could be. He quickly illuminates the dark interior, and to his absolute surprise, he observes a long row of women. Upon seeing this, the sect leader quickly runs forward and recognizes that they are actually her own disciples. While she keeps blaming herself for this, our protagonist comments that this is surely just karma punishing her for her bad actions. Right then, one of the prisoners, who is still barely alive, recognizes her master's voice and quickly calls out to her. The sect leader immediately recognizes that it happens to be her disciple, Lancy, so they step further inside and she confirms that it really is her, observing her in quite a strange position. The utterly weakened disciple comments that she knew her master would eventually come to save her, and thus we are introduced to the second disciple of the sect leader. Upon seeing her, the master asks how she ended up in such a terrible state. Our protagonist comments that this is clearly the work of his own sect, but luckily, she is not dead just yet. He quickly inspects the seal on her abdomen and confirms that her spiritual root is right on the verge of being completely shattered. This deeply shocks the master, and from the back of the room, our protagonist remarks that her ultimate destiny was to become a cultivation cauldron. Upon hearing this, the sect leader quickly begs him to save her disciple. She then explains that the day they were attacked, her primary disciple completely betrayed her, and after being completely cornered, her second disciple covered her retreat. She mentions that thanks to that sacrifice, she was able to escape to a safe cave. While telling this story, she indicates that if he saves her, she will even willingly accept to become his cultivation cauldron. Upon hearing this, the disciple asks how she could possibly beg a demon from this evil sect. Our protagonist just stares at her, and the other one comments that she would honestly prefer to die before suffering such a terrible humiliation. Right then, the system reports that the target's hostility has officially reached 50%. It also informs him that if he manages to successfully reform her, he will obtain a Earth-grade spiritual treasure. Our protagonist is absolutely thrilled by this, and grabbing the master, he mentions that he only helps his own people. Having said that, he demands that she say out loud that she belongs to him. With no other option left, the master of the Jade Maiden sect ends up admitting to being Yeseng's woman. Upon hearing this, our protagonist suddenly strikes her, and immediately the system reports that the disciple's hostility has just risen to 60%. Seeing that he is definitely on the right track, our protagonist takes hold of the sect leader and indicates that he never actually agreed that she was his woman. Bai Ningbing, with absolutely no other choice, mentions being his slave. Thus, while she admits to this, the disciple Lancy becomes utterly infuriated, and her hostility quickly shoots up to 75%. After this, our protagonist directly provokes her, and the other one comments that if she had known about this back then, she would have completely torn him to pieces. Yeseng, with pure contempt, comments that they only know how to abuse the weak, and that she desperately needs to be reformed. Turning to her master, he comments that now she is begging him, and that pretty soon her disciple will also end up in the exact same situation. Right then, the system informs once again that the hostility has risen to 88%. Suddenly, the ceiling collapses, and our protagonist remembers that he is still right in the middle of a fierce battle. With no other choice, he ends up putting the sect leader away and immediately releases the disciple. He coldly orders her to follow him if she truly wants to stay alive. Lan Si, completely confused, wonders what on earth this demon is planning to do. Right at that moment, several Orthodox cultivators arrive, commenting that they definitely did not expect to find disciples from the Jade Maiden sect here. Thus, the leader of this group introduces himself as Linz, the first disciple of the Swan Lin sect. Our protagonist gets deeply annoyed about running into these guys, since he is currently no match for them. Right then, Lancy turns to the ones she believes are her allies and tells them that both her master and she are completely under the control of this demon. Upon hearing this, the other leader remembers that the sect leader possesses the innate body, and that if she is under the control of this demonic cultivator, she has surely lost all of her power by now. Having said that, he mentions that if that is the case, they might as well have a very deep conversation, since after all, she is considered the #1 beauty of the Orthodox sect. Upon hearing this, Lancy asks how they can possibly say that if they are supposed to be Orthodox cultivators. Right then, the opposing side reminds her that she is the second disciple of the sect leader, and even though she might not be quite as beautiful, she still possesses a sacred chemical spiritual body. Upon hearing this, Lancy is completely shocked, and our protagonist, thinking to himself, comments that he could easily use these guys to increase her hostility. With this plan in mind, he quickly indicates that he could gladly hand over the sect leader to them, and in exchange, he only wants them to spare his life. The head disciple comments that he is quite smart, and demands that before bringing the sect leader out, he must watch the door, since they are going to go have some fun for a while. Our protagonist readily agrees to this, and as he walks out, the Orthodox disciple gives the secret signal to finish him off. After that, he turns back to the female companion, fully ready to subdue her. Lancy, completely furious, swears to get her revenge even if she turns into a ghost. And with this, her malice instantly shoots up to a full 100%. Thus, our protagonist checks her information, and he is immediately rewarded with the Earth-grade spiritual treasure, thereby obtaining a bloody sword. Once it is in his possession, he comments that he will use these subjects to test his brand new treasure. He immediately slices the one who is following him, and once he completely destroys him, the sword begins to absorb his blood. Following this, the system informs him that his sword can absorb blood to increase his own attributes. Right then, the others observe what he just did and comment that they did not expect him to be hiding a spiritual treasure. Without wasting any time, they quickly activate an array and immediately begin to attack. While backing away, our protagonist rapidly thinks of a plan. Right then, he ends up receiving a sharp cut, and he also feels that the essence he absorbed just a moment ago is simply not enough. Right then, the Orthodox cultivators quickly change their formation and invoke a massive, enormous sword. Once they launch the attack, our protagonist barely manages to block it with great effort. Seeing this, the Orthodox disciple asks exactly how long he will be able to resist. Our protagonist holds on, but in the end, he gets completely knocked down. Seeing this, the leader orders his subordinate to finish him off, and to make sure not to damage the spiritual treasure. The subordinate quickly obeys, and as he approaches, he praises the fact that he was able to cultivate such a remarkable spiritual weapon. Thus, he reaches out to take the sword. But we see that our protagonist does not let him have it. Yesenk, with a smirk, comments that they thought he was completely finished, but he never actually thought about using his very own blood. Thus, he feeds the sword, and once it has accumulated enough energy, he unleashes a powerful attack, completely piercing right through his enemy. At the exact same time, the leader of this group watches in shock as his subordinate dies. Thinking it over, he realizes that the protagonist is far too strong, so he makes a quick decision and immediately prepares to escape. Our protagonist comments that it is already far too late, and thus he ends up completely piercing through the very last of his enemies. While the sword absorbs his blood, the Orthodox cultivator asks how this is even possible, and in the end, our protagonist stands completely victorious. Right then, he looks at his next potential victim and sarcastically asks if she actually wants to kill her own savior. While Lancy stares at him, our protagonist asks if that was truly what her master taught her. Lancy apologizes, stating that even though he saved her, she still absolutely must kill him. Thus, as she lunges forward to attack, our protagonist comments that he knew it all along, remarking that in her sect, there are only ungrateful women whom he must properly domesticate. He immediately activates his system and catches this ungrateful girl. Once this is done, the system asks whether he will reform her or refine her directly. Yesenk asks about the specific rewards he will get from both options, and the system explains that if he decides to refine her directly, his cultivation will instantly enter the key refinement realm, and apart from that, he will also obtain a high-grade foundation establishment pill. On the other hand, if he decides to reform her, he will be able to enslave her. The system mentions that although he cannot raise her level, he will obtain the special Body of the 10,000 Forests. This immediately catches our protagonist's attention, since with that specific body, he will be able to identify absolutely any herb or spiritual plant in the entire world. Thus, he comments that if he manages to reform her, he could easily become a master of alchemy. Knowing this full well, he takes hold of the woman and indicates that he doesn't actually want to kill her. Hearing this, she quickly asks what he plans to do to her. Then, our protagonist pulls hard on the chains while grabbing her, commenting that he has heard she possesses the sacred body of the alchemical spirit. He mentions that if they perform a double cultivation, he will be able to fully recover from his wounds. And right then, he goes at it like an animal in heat. In the end, our protagonist manages to reform her up to 20%. While he is getting dressed, the system informs him that he has entered the initial stage to obtain the Body of the 10,000 Forests. Our protagonist genuinely rejoices at this and quickly notices that even his aura absorption speed has increased. Quite pleased, he comments that this time he got himself a truly great harvest. That being said, he stores away his second slave. Calling them master and disciple, he comments that he simply cannot wait to reform them completely. Right at that moment, the pavilion begins to vibrate violently. Our protagonist understands right away that it is dangerous, so he quickly exits and prepares to make his escape. Just then, he observes the alchemy treasures. To his total surprise, he notices that he can now identify both their value and their quality. He rejoices because of this and indicates that it is surely due to his brand new body. With this in mind, he quickly pockets the treasures and, once he is finished, begins to flee. However, at that exact instant, he bumps right into a woman. Yesenk asks who she is, to which the other comments that she should be asking him that very question. Thus, we see that it is an elder of the sect who happens to be at the 5th level of the Golden Core realm, Wang Tianmei. Right then, our protagonist suffers a sudden nosebleed. Utterly confused, he wonders if it's perhaps because he bumped into this sect elder. However, he quickly notices that his blood has begun to boil completely out of control. Thus, he looks at the voluptuous woman and recalls that one of the elders possesses the innate seduction bone, meaning that with this constitution, no man can ever hope to resist her charm. While he is thinking about this, the woman traps him and asks who exactly he is. In the end, our protagonist reports that he is a new disciple of Elder Gu. He tells her that, as his disciple, he was trying his best to protect the pills in the alchemy hall. Pointing toward the hole, he claims that a moment ago, 3 Orthodox cultivators attacked him while recounting how he risked his own life to face them. The sect elder asks how a cultivator of his low level could possibly defeat them. Our protagonist replies that it was pure luck. However, thinking to himself, he curses because this woman has begun to utilize her seduction techniques to force the truth out of him. Even so, he resists the effect. Seeing this, she compliments his ability to resist. However, she doesn't believe him at all and quickly takes the alchemy cauldron, places it right in front of him, and indicates that if he truly is the disciple of that elder, he surely won't have any trouble refining a couple of foundation establishment pills. Our protagonist understands that she is making things difficult for him, since he shouldn't normally be able to refine pills of that level. However, things are different now because with his new body of the 10,000 forests, he will definitely be able to achieve it. While he gets ready, Tianmei notices that his aura has begun to change. As she watches him, she wonders if he will really be able to refine the pills. Immediately, Yeseng summons his alchemy fire and ignites the cauldron. After this, thinking to himself, he mentions that next he must gather the medicinal herbs. Thus, he looks at those materials and indicates that they are actually damaged. Even so, he comments that it won't be a problem at all. He immediately begins to select various herbs and in the end, finishes by mixing them all together. Thus, he begins to refine them and as he concentrates deeply, tells himself that he must carefully control the intensity of the fire. At the same time, Elder Tianmei, thinking to herself, notices that the herbs he chose are completely different from the ones she had seen previously. She wonders if he is perhaps trying to trick her. Moments later, our protagonist finishes, and after extinguishing the flames, ends up extracting the pills. Thus, he obtains 6 pills, all of which are at the foundation establishment level. The elder begins to inspect them, and to her absolute surprise, notices that they are of superior grade. With these icons demonstrating his skill in alchemy, she wonders when on earth that elder took on such a disciple. Yeseng, on the other hand, comments that he has already proven his identity, so he asks if he can now go to the battlefield to support his mistress. Tianmei replies that it won't be necessary. Having said that, she quickly grabs him and carries him away at great speed. After a short while, they arrive at another location, and right there, our protagonist sees the corpse of the man who should be his master. Just then, a cultivator from the Orthodox faction arrives. This man comments that, on the entire front, she is the only one capable of facing him. Thus, we see that he was an elder of the Suanlin sect. Yeseng, thinking to himself, curses bitterly because he ended up running straight into a cultivator of the 6th level in the Golden Core stage. At the same time, Elder Tianmei utilizes her technique and asks if having such bloodlust is truly fitting for a righteous sect. The other replies that to eliminate demonic cultivators, it doesn't matter what method they use. Tianmei steps closer and comments that there isn't much difference between the righteous and the demonic. Thus, she activates her seduction bone and asks if she isn't correct. With this, the enemy elder completely seems to fall into temptation. Our protagonist observes this and simply cannot believe that she has subdued him so easily. Right then, the sect elder draws her concealed weapon and prepares to finish off her opponent. However, the very instant she brings her weapon down, it ends up clashing heavily against a massive sword. After this, the enemy elder asks why she thinks he was sent by the Suanlin sect in the first place. He then explains that carnal desire would only harm his cultivation, which is precisely why he chose to get rid of his little friend and eliminate the root of the problem entirely. Hearing this, our protagonist cannot believe they have actually gone to such extremes. Just then, the elder begs him not to think he won just because he resisted her seduction technique. Having said that, she quickly launches herself into the attack. Immediately, the enemy master activates the steel body art. In this way, he blocks the attacks effortlessly. Once done, he mentions that with her superior body, she won't be able to fight against him. He immediately counterattacks and ends up knocking his opponent down. Once she impacts the ground, our protagonist senses that the elder is no match for him, so he prepares to escape. Right then, the enemy elder drives his sword into the ground and ends up activating the matrix of the 10,000 blades. Thus, he raises a powerful barrier and turning to his enemy, mentions that he will earn great merit by ending her life. Tian Mei did not expect to be cornered to this extreme point. At the same time, our protagonist curses because he also ended up trapped inside the barrier. Left with no other choice, he draws his sword and prepares to smash this barrier to pieces. To his terrible luck, his strength is just not enough. Just then, the enemy elder calls him ridiculous for believing himself capable of shattering his great matrix. Raising his sword high, he mentions that once he finishes off this witch, he will be his very next sacrifice. Our protagonist gets furious at this and, thinking to himself, wonders what possible method he could use. He quickly remembers the pills he just refined. Thinking it through, he mentions that if he manages to achieve a breakthrough, he might just stand a chance of surviving. Without overthinking it, he ends up swallowing the pills. Thus, while he cultivates, the sect elder observes him and notices that he plans to achieve a kingdom advancement. At the same time, the enemy elder asks if he seriously believes he can succeed. He quickly rushes to the attack, indicating that before he becomes a real threat, he will finish him off. However, at the very last second, he ends up being stopped by Elder Tian Mei. Right then, our protagonist feels that his level is on the verge of rising. He quickly notices that to secure his advancement, he urgently needs a technique of that specific level. Thus, he enters his inner space and demands that his two slaves give him a technique for the Foundation Establishment realm. Lancy insults him and asks if he is perhaps dreaming. Our protagonist doesn't give her the chance to continue and quickly attacks her master. Seeing this, the subordinate asks what on earth he is doing to her. Our protagonist replies that if she doesn't cooperate, he will have no choice but to reform her by force. In the end, she gives in and finishes by teaching him the technique, Flowing Cloud Sword. Right then, the system informs him that Sovereign Bai's reform has increased to 20%. Thus, our protagonist cultivates the brand new technique and, in the end, finishes by rising in realm. The elders notice this immediately and witness exactly how our protagonist enters the Foundation Establishment realm. Upon seeing this, the elder of the righteous sect curses loudly and manages to wound his female enemy. She, wasting absolutely no time, throws her dagger and ends up driving it straight into his chest, causing him to fall down. The other one, on the other hand, raises his inner strength and manages to close up his wound. As he draws closer, the system reports that because he increased the reformation of the female sovereign, he obtains the blood demon art. With this technique, he will be able to sacrifice his blood essence and temporarily increase his cultivation for a brief moment. Our protagonist, thinking to himself, mentions that this will be more than enough. Right then, he notices the enemy master, who is moving in, fully determined to kill him. Yesenk, without a single doubt, activates the blood demon art. In this way, he elevates his strength and ultimately ends up utilizing the Flowing Cloud Sword technique. The enemy elder notices that something is deeply wrong and, wasting no time, launches a swift counterattack. This severely affects our protagonist, who falls heavily wounded in the very next instant. Seeing this, the elderly Tian Mei, thinking to herself, comments that he was incredibly naive to believe he could actually help her. Just then, the elder of the righteous sect questions why on earth he can use the technique of the Jade Maiden sect. Immediately afterward, he spits out blood, and thus we see that he was completely pierced through. With this, he finally perishes. Right away, the barrier is deactivated and the master, utterly shocked, wonders if he truly managed to finish him off. She looks closely at the disciple and simply cannot believe that a minor cultivator managed to take down a powerful elder. At that moment, our protagonist feels the harsh side effects of using the bloody demon art, and so he ends up losing consciousness. Right before he falls, the old woman catches him. Looking at him, she remarks that she cannot believe he has earned the interest of this sister. At the exact same time, over at the Swanling sect, a subordinate urgently reports some bad news. The master asks what is going on, and the disciple informs him that both the life lamp of the elder and the life lamp of his great-grandson have completely gone out. Infuriated, he releases his powerful energy and demands to know who did it. The disciple replies that he does not know, and that the only thing he knows is that they were murdered inside the alchemy hall of the Heiyuan sect. The master hears this and declares that for killing one of his elders and his grandson, they will pay a heavy price. Thus, as he prepares to go out and face them, a guard appears and quickly begs him to calm his anger. He tells him that he is still in the middle of his cultivation seclusion and that if he leaves now, he will end up losing a great part of his strength. The master asks if he is supposed to just swallow this humiliation, to which the other replies that he is not. Right there, we see the second elder of the Swanling sect. This man comments that they can pretend and establish a temporary truce so that they lower their guard. In whispers, he tells him his clever plan, and in the end, the Grand Master decides to accept it. However, still completely unable to let this pass, he demands that a certain matter be taken care of. He orders him to move their undercover agents, and no matter the method, put an end to his grandson's killer. The elder obeys his order and thus takes his leave. With this, we return to the base of the Hejuan sect. As the elderly Tianmei walks in, her subordinate reports that the attack from the Orthodox Alliance has completely stopped. They also offer themselves to heal the disciple she is carrying. Tianmei swiftly rejects this offer and, once she closes the door, comments that she will personally take care of it. Thus, she begins to treat our protagonist, and while she heals him, a soft smile appears on her face. Just then, she overhears the comments of her disciples, who are wondering who this disciple could possibly be, given that the old woman is showing him so much importance. They also wonder if perhaps she is interested in engaging in dual cultivation with him, and that if that is the case, it will be his absolute greatest fortune. Tianmei does not get annoyed by this, and stays focused on healing the young disciple. At the same time, she decides to investigate and uncover his deepest secrets. She recalls that during the fight, she witnessed his sudden increase in cultivation and that strange sword technique. With this in mind, she utilizes her innate seduction bones and attempts to dig deep into his subconscious mind. At the exact same time, the system warns him that someone is actively trying to weaken his mental state. Yiseng understands that it must be the elderly Tianmei. While the woman continues her attempt, our protagonist notices that she holds absolutely no hostility toward him, which means he will not be able to use his system to reform her. He also notes that he possesses far too many secrets that he simply cannot allow her to discover. Therefore, he enters his inner soul space and, standing right in front of his slaves, demands that they hand over a cultivation technique meant strictly for women. Upon hearing this, the sovereign Bai asks what he wants it for. Our protagonist, having no time for lengthy explanations, simply orders her to teach it to him. The other woman comments that this specific technique is only for women and that he could easily die if he attempts to cultivate it. Upon hearing this, our protagonist smiles and, quite content, comments that this is exactly what he wants. Completely failing to understand what he truly means, the sovereign decides to teach him the technique, thinking that in the process he might die and she will finally be set free. Meanwhile, we see that Tianmei is just about to uncover his secrets. In this way, she encounters the technique of the Jade Mating Classic. As she uncovers more of it, she senses a strange energy and notices that it is actually the reverse flow of his meridians. She quickly feels that her very own seduction bones have turned completely against her and ended up giving her a thoroughly unexpected effect. Right at that moment, our protagonist wakes up. Thinking to himself, he realizes that both his vital organs and his meridians have suffered a considerable amount of damage. Just then, he looks at the old woman and notices that she is in a highly unusual state. Much to his surprise, she immobilizes him once again. Getting right on top of him, she asks if she looks beautiful. Hearing this and seeing her current state, he understands that she fell completely under her own seduction effect. While he tries his best to resist, she takes him down with absolute intensity. In the meantime, the infiltrators from the enemy clan arrive at the residence. They mention that by order of the master, they must avenge the young master. One companion quickly decides to go down and finish him off. However, the other one stops him, telling him that he is currently with the elderly Tianmei and that she is currently at the 5th level of the Golden Core realm. He mentions that if he goes down alone, they will only end up dying, so they decide to wait until she finally leaves, and once he is completely alone, they will break in to finish the job. Meanwhile, they call upon the rest of their subordinates. Once they arrive, they begin to issue the direct orders to take action. Meanwhile, inside the room, we see the elderly Tian Mei completely wrapped in intense pleasure. Once they finish, she ends up falling down thoroughly weakened. Our protagonist comments that her seduction bones are truly terrifying. Thus, we see that he has completely recovered and that he has even entered the 4th level of the Foundation Establishment realm. As he finishes getting dressed, Tian Mei wakes up, commenting that even though he does not possess a high level of cultivation, he has great physical skills since he managed to completely exhaust her. Our protagonist does not really know how to answer. Having no choice, he apologizes, indicating that he had absolutely no intention of offending her. The other woman pays no real importance to it and, to his utter surprise, asks what he plans to do now. Hearing this, our protagonist wonders if she actually expects him to take full responsibility. While he thinks about foolish things, Tian Mei comments that he apparently does not comprehend the sheer gravity of this entire matter. Thus, she asks if he seriously believes that she obtained the position of sect elder solely by being at the 5th level of the Golden Core realm. She tells him that all of this is entirely due to her seduction bone, and that in the end, she is nothing more than a cultivation cauldron. Having said this, she tells him that all those who are born with this specific constitution end up being raised merely as tools to improve someone else's level. That being said, she asks if he can guess exactly who has been raising her all this time to later harvest her. After hearing all of this, our protagonist asks if she is perhaps referring to the Grand Master of the sect. Tian Mei, teasing him, asks if they now understand what a massive problem they have gotten themselves into. Our protagonist understands her deep worry and indicates that he thought she would scold him for having taken her very first time. Tian Mei asks why on earth she would scold him for that, since after all, her body was completely destined to be handed over to someone else anyway. She mentions that now that they have done it, they will have to look for a way to face him together. Teasing him further, she comments that he is also a very handsome guy, so she feels quite satisfied. Hearing this, our protagonist wonders why she seems to be actively provoking him. With this in mind, he grabs her and indicates that he truly wants to protect her. However, his current strength is simply not enough. Having said that, he ends up stealing a kiss from her and asks for her help to continue breaking the limits of his level. Thus, while he passionately goes at it with wild intensity, we see the assassins who are forced to watch everything even if they do not want to. Later on, they comment that they have already waited for over 3 hours. The chief decides to wait for just 1 more hour, mentioning that if they do not come out in an hour, they will have to break in by sheer force. Thus, they wait patiently, and shortly after, the elderly Tian Mei finally prepares to leave. Once outside the house, she cannot believe that the young man is so incredibly inconsiderate, since he went far too hard on her. Right at that moment, she senses several hidden presences. While pretending to look up at the moon, she wonders to herself how on earth they allowed intruders to infiltrate the base. Even though she is fully aware of this, she decides to just walk away, mentioning that if that little kid genuinely wants to be her man, he must be completely capable of dealing with this garbage on his own. With that being said, we return to our main protagonist, who has just successfully entered the 5th level of his cultivation realm. He is happily celebrating this breakthrough, but right at that moment, the assassins suddenly burst into his room. Without wasting any single second, they launch themselves into the attack, loudly declaring that they will avenge their young master. Our protagonist quickly recognizes that they belong to the Xuanling sect. Thus, he draws his sword and states that he will use them to test out his newly acquired strength. He rapidly blocks the incoming attack, and at the very next instant, another foe attacks by surprise. After the heavy impact, Ye Feng is forced to step back and is immediately pursued by yet another one. While effortlessly avoiding these strikes, he smilingly comments that they are simply way too slow. In this manner, he finishes off his first opponent, and after splitting him entirely in two, the sword begins to rapidly absorb his blood. The system promptly informs him that because of this, the sword will begin to evolve. So, while the fierce attack continues, the system reports that the evolution progress is currently at 30%. While they are fighting, the leader of the assassins recognizes that it is a high-level spiritual treasure which makes him change his mind and order his men to form a specialized matrix. While the subordinates fall back, our protagonist rushes forward indicating that he will not let them escape. Thus, he finishes off the second one, and we see that only the upper half of his body actually reaches his companions. After fully absorbing his blood, the system reports that the evolution progress is now at 50%. Seeing this, the assassin leader makes a desperate decision, and after throwing his companion forward, he comments that he will never forget his ultimate sacrifice. He then activates a strange formation in which the companion begins to transmute. While the energy surrounds our protagonist, he asks if a supposedly righteous sect seriously uses this kind of dark method. He immediately enters his inner space and, turning to the slave Lanxi, asks her to help him kill a few enemies. Lanxi, on the other hand, questions why she should even bother to help him. At the very next instant, they give an electric shock to her master, and our protagonist coldly tells her that she has absolutely no right to negotiate. Having no other choice, Lanxi begs him to at least give her some clothes. Thus, he puts her in a rather revealing outfit, and at the next instant, the system reports that her reformation has increased to 40%. Because of this achievement, his body of the 10,000 forests successfully enters the intermediate stage. Meanwhile, on the outside, the assassin leader wonders to himself what that strange green light was and quickly orders to increase the power to finally finish him off. Just then, he spots a sword and rapidly saves his companion. However, the sword suddenly changes direction and completely destroys the center of the matrix. With this, our protagonist breaks free and indicates that it is now his turn to have some fun, as we see that the evolution progress of his sword rises to 70%. Seeing this, the assassin leader realizes that he will not be easy to handle at all. Left with no other choice, he grabs his remaining companion and indicates that he will remember his sacrifice. Before the other can even say a word, he ends up completely destroying him. After absorbing his energy, he mentions that with this method, he will be able to handle the power of someone in the Golden Core realm. With this brand new strength, he quickly launches himself into the attack. Thus, he manages to deflect our protagonist, who ends up crashing heavily against the wall. The assassin comments that he is no longer a match for him. Just then, he evades a surprise attack, and while searching around, asks who is attacking him from the shadows. At that moment, our protagonist comments that it seems his weapon truly needs to absorb his own blood to level up. Thus, he feeds it with his own blood. And with this, the system informs that the evolution progress has successfully reached 100%, and that because of this, his sword has transformed into a blood-devouring demonic saber, meaning he obtains the technique, Blood Demon Slice. Right then, the assassin attacks, and once they block his strike, he quickly throws multiple talismans. Thus, he traps our protagonist and rapidly makes him explode. However, he notices that this does not work at all, since Ye Feng comes out completely unharmed and activates his new technique. Feeling the imminent danger, the assassin quickly invokes protective amulets. However, he realizes that this is not enough and ends up receiving a massive amount of damage. Nevertheless, upon seeing the state of his opponent, he bursts out laughing, and while mentioning that he has won, our protagonist's slave suddenly appears and delivers the final blow. Upon seeing her, the assassin recognizes her as the second disciple of the Jade Maiden sect. Our protagonist, on the other hand, congratulates her for her good work and quickly uses his sword to absorb his blood. After this, Lanxi asks if he can now let her master go. While the system reports that her reformation has reached 50%, our protagonist reminds her that both of them are his cultivation cauldrons, and because of this, he will not let anything happen to them. Just then, a strange orb drops. It quickly shoots away, and before it can leave the residence, our protagonist splits it in two. Seeing this, Lanxi bursts out laughing, and our protagonist asks what this actually means. Thus, the slave explains that what he just broke was a recording stone, which can record the surroundings and transmit the images. She mentions that they surely watched his fight, so he will definitely become the primary target of the Zhuanling sect. Our protagonist recognizes that this will be a problem and asks if this doesn't affect her as well. Lanxi does not quite understand, and our protagonist comments that they must have seen how the second disciple of the sovereign helped him. He quickly takes her by the chin and demands that she watch her tone, since she is nothing more than his cultivation cauldron. Just then, the guards arrive and observe the total chaos. The leader of this group quickly asks what is going on, and the subordinate reports that they were attacked by the Xuanling sect. Hearing this, the guard leader approaches our protagonist and, looking closely at the girl, asks if she isn't Langxi from the Jade Maiden sect. Our protagonist confirms this, and the other relates that this woman was captured by his master to ultimately become his cultivation cauldron. Having said that, he asks why she is on his side. Ye Feng pays no attention to this and, quite the contrary, asks why he, being the security guard, allowed the disciples of the Xuanling sect to infiltrate. The other grabs him by his clothes and demands that he stop changing the subject. Having said this, he orders him to hand over that woman. Our protagonist simply smiles at this and, after drawing his sword, releases his energy, asking how impolite he can possibly be. Seeing this, the subordinate tries to calm his chief down. However, he pays no attention and quickly pushes him aside, just as Tian Mei arrives. The guard leader quickly recognizes her, and without wasting any time, greets her and reports that this guy stole his cultivation cauldron. However, our protagonist interrupts him and recounts how the enemies easily broke into the base and that now he is trying to accuse him of theft. Hearing this, Tian Mei comments that whether it is treasures or people, they ultimately belong to the most capable. Turning to the other matter, she severely reprimands the guard leader, asking why on earth he let agents of the enemy sect enter. Hearing this, the other quickly apologizes. Without beating around the bush, Tian Mei orders him to take care of cleaning up the corpses. Having no other option, the guard leader complies, and before walking away, he tells our protagonist that this will certainly not end here. Ye Feng mockingly replies that he will be waiting for him. Thus, the group is left alone, and Tian Mei begins to speak, indicating that she did not expect him to obtain such a high-quality cauldron. She also reminds him that he must possess sufficient strength to protect his new cauldron. Our protagonist fully understands this, and she, leaning in close, comments that the exact same thing applies to her. After this, she steps back and indicates that the following morning she will give him a highly important mission. Once she leaves, Langxi grudgingly offers her thanks, since if that man had taken her, she wouldn't have had it easy. Because of this, the system reports that her reformation has reached 60%, and that he consequently obtains the creation formula of the infinite cycle. This specific formula helps him absorb spiritual aura of the wood type and fully heal his wounds. Quite satisfied with this, he comments that it seems this slave is much easier to reform than her master. With this, we return to the Xuanling sect, where the master of said sect observes that the soul lights of his subordinates have gone out, so he logically deduces that they surely died. At seeing this, the master curses, indicating that everyone is just complete garbage. The elder of his sect asks him not to get furious, and so he tells that he managed to record the combat. He immediately shows what happened, and after recounting the events, reports that Langxi, the second disciple of the Jade Sovereign, was also there. After thinking it over, the Grand Master mentions that even with her help, it shouldn't be possible to face their entire group of undercover agents. The elder agrees with him, and for this reason, asks him to look at his weapon. Thus, he recounts that this is an Earth-grade spiritual treasure. Thinking to himself, he mentions that such a treasure shouldn't be in the hands of a disciple in the Foundation establishment realm. The Grand Master asks what he means, and the elder deduces that it is surely a holy son from the Huang sect. Upon hearing this, the Grand Master finally understands. He mentions that only the successors of a sect possess such weapons, and they often keep them in secret. After saying this, the elder congratulates him, mentioning that even though they had great losses, at least they discovered the identity of a holy son from the enemy sect, and knowing this, they will be able to eliminate an heir to that sect. Upon hearing this, the Grand Master asks if he is perhaps implying that he should intervene personally. The elder tells him not necessarily. He speaks of the recent truce they agreed upon. He indicates that they could take advantage of the opportunity and organize a grand competition which he could eliminate him in secret. The Grand Master is pleased with this strategy, so he immediately addresses the entire sect and orders them to halt all attacks on the Yuhuang sect. He also mentions that they will hold a grand competition between sects, in which he will take care of eliminating that holy son. At the same time, our protagonist sneezes and, thinking to himself, wonders why he is doing it, since being at his level, he shouldn't be able to catch a cold. He decides not to think about foolish things and instead focus on cultivating the new creation formula. Thus, he cultivates said formula and at the next instant begins to absorb the energy of all the wood around him. Seeing this, he is happy since it's not very different from stealing energy. Just then, he spots a mosquito and uses his new technique. Once he dries it up, he can't believe he's capable of extracting the internal energy of the living beings around him. At that moment, the slave Langxi asks if that is perhaps another evil technique. While calling him a demon, she asks if he has no scruples. Next, the system reports that he will be able to improve his infinite cycle technique if he performs a dual cultivation with a wood-type cultivator. Upon reading this, our protagonist smiles since, coincidentally, he is looking at a wood-type cultivator. Thus, he quickly knocks her down, approaching and asking if she doesn't want to have a dual cultivation. Without listening to an answer, he proceeds to do the delicious. Moments later, we see the exhausted girl. Our protagonist, on the other hand, can't believe he obtained such great benefits. At that, Langxi composes herself and quickly calls him a shameless villain. Suddenly, our protagonist silences her and indicates that this dual cultivation not only benefits him. Having said this, the woman checks her cultivation and notices that she made great progress. Our protagonist comments that he has helped her. He also tells her that if they continue with the dual cultivation, she could recover her cultivation base. Thus, he takes her by the chin, and the girl, thinking of her master, decides to sacrifice herself. Thus, she lays our protagonist down. With a face of disgust, she mentions that a single session of dual cultivation won't be enough. With this, they spend the entire night mating. The next morning, the elder Tian Mei enters and, scolding our protagonist, asks why he hasn't come out yet. She quickly observes the situation, and our protagonist, with a smile, asks if she would believe him if he told her he has been cultivating. Thus, we see an annoyed Tian Mei who orders him to get out. She quickly asks if she hadn't told him to rest for today's big event. Ye Feng answers that he did, and thus shows that he is now at the 5th level of the Foundation Establishment realm. Seeing this, Tian Mei wonders if perhaps that brat from the Jade Maiden sect possesses a physical body suitable for dual cultivation. At that, our protagonist gropes her and asks if she is perhaps jealous. The other, still annoyed, asks if he already has the confidence to defeat the sect master. Our protagonist quickly steps back, indicating that he still can't. At the same time, the slave Langxi wonders what kind of background this demon has, since he can talk casually with the elder Tian Mei. In the end, Tian Mei lets it slide, and before leaving, comments that he can also bring his human cauldron. With this, she asks if he doesn't want to know what rewards he will get for having killed the elder of the Swanling sect. Thus, we see a meeting point where several disciples wonder if they know why the elder Tian Mei called the meeting. They quickly give their guesses, and also remember the death of Elder Gu, who is in charge of the alchemy hall. Having said this, they comment that surely Brother Zhao will take his post, since, after all, he was his main disciple. Thus, we see this subject, who was the leader of the guard. Annoyed, he remembers how he was humiliated by the elder in front of that brat. Just then, our group enters. Upon seeing the elder, everyone is captivated by her beauty. They quickly mention that she is beautiful, and while they begin to fantasize, Tian Mei ends up silencing them, thus announcing the reason for the meeting. She informs that during the battle they lost an elder in the Golden Core realm. However, they also finished off another enemy elder. She recounts that they have now entered a temporary truce. Upon hearing this, the disciples rejoice since they won't have to go to the battlefront. At that, the elder recounts the death of the elder and indicates that the alchemy pavilion has a vacant post. Upon hearing this, everyone assumes that surely Brother Zhao will take the post, and they quickly begin to congratulate him. At the same time, this disciple, thinking to himself, comments that at least the elder is sensible. However, to his surprise, Tian Mei ends up announcing that the person responsible for the alchemy pavilion will be Ye Feng. Our protagonist, thinking to himself, wonders why she is naming him. At that, the other disciples question the decision, indicating that the most suitable is the elder brother Zhao. While they question her decision, said brother approaches the elder. He mentions that the pavilion has always been under the care of his master, that he followed him for 15 years, so he is the most appropriate to take the post. After this, he points to our protagonist and indicates that he joined the sect just a few days ago, that he won't be able to assume the responsibility. Our protagonist tries to reject the post, but the master telepathically asks him to stand firm and not disappoint her. Our protagonist sees that there is no way out, so answering, he asks if she perhaps believes he is the most qualified for the post. The other answers that in terms of seniority and level, he surpasses him, and besides that, he is the one who knows the Alchemy Pavilion the most. Our protagonist doesn't deny this, and changing the subject, recounts what happened the previous night in which assassins entered the Alchemy Pavilion under his watch. The other is left speechless, and our protagonist continues asking where he was when they attacked him. He asks why he appeared only when he had finished with the enemies, asking if he was perhaps trying to steal his credit. Upon hearing this, the other brothers of the sect begin to question the elder brother. While they talk, the cultivator Xiao asks him to stop talking nonsense. He mentions again that with his level, he is not worthy of being the master of the Alchemy Pavilion, so he proposes to have a duel, that the loser will have to voluntarily renounce the post. Having said this, he addresses the elder and asks if she has any objection. What he didn't expect was for our protagonist to ask if perhaps an expert at the pinnacle of his realm would want to face a younger brother of intermediate level. He asks if he is perhaps not ashamed. Without waiting for an answer, he ends up accepting the challenge. Upon hearing this, the other asks if they shouldn't bet something. Our protagonist asks what he wants to bet, and the other indicates that besides being the master of the pavilion, he must also return Langxi to Xiao. Upon hearing this, our protagonist's slave gets annoyed. At that, the other disciples look at her, and after recognizing her, they can't believe that he really turned her into his cultivation oven. They mention that if they could cultivate with her, they would be willing to lose 20 years of their life. At that, our protagonist asks what his bet will be if he loses. The other is surprised by this and asks if he perhaps has a chance of winning. Thus, he pulls out a treasure handed down by his master and indicates that if he beats him, he will give it to him. Immediately, the system detects a spiritual treasure which can be devoured by his boundless life creation art. Showing the treasure, it asks if he wishes to devour it.